Grampian Nation, I wanted to say thank you. You have made Building Men a category bestseller on Amazon. We're doing phenomenal on Barnes and Noble. If you have not yet read Building Men, I'd encourage you go online, find a copy wherever you get books, and give us a great review. We appreciate it, and we're looking forward to the next time we get to chat on the Grampian. Hey, Grampian Nation, we found a guy who saw an industry that needed changing. And so he did something about it, makes him a change agent, it makes him a leader. Hang on for Paul Flowers.
In 2013, I coined the name Grampian, and I gave it to your host, Jim Tracy.
Folks, I promised you that I would bring you change agents and I would bring you leaders. And there's some people that you see out in the marketplace and you go, dude, I just got to have this guy on my podcast. Paul Flowers, welcome to the Grampian, man. How are you?
Jim, I'm doing fantastic. I'm on the right side of the ground. The day is beautiful, and I'm more than excited to be here again, championing on the Grampian today.
All right, champion on the Grampian. So, when I look at your site, it says a leader built by life. That's pretty cool. I mean, a lot of times when we learn, we either learn by learning from somebody else or we
Right.
learning by doing, which is training by trauma. It sounds like you've been through a bit of that.
I was going to say a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. The beautiful part is growing up, I learned from watching my sister get in trouble. Shout out to Fallon. I love you. So whenever you hear this, sorry, I'm just mentioning it. Grew up in a household with one sibling. My father died when I was 3, and it was my mother just raising the 2 of us. So I learned early on that you can learn from somebody else's, again, forgive me, Fallon, misfortunes and life experiences, let's call it. Transition that 30 plus 40 years later, and it's about the same thing. So I've gone through things that I didn't necessarily have a mentor to guide and direct me on. And there have been areas where, specifically in the work that I do now, I've had mentors to hold my hand and help me to not make the mistakes that others have made. Because ultimately, because I work in, again, a client-facing and a client service industry, it makes a difference when I mess up. If I mess up in my line of work, it can literally be a life-threatening type of thing.
Yeah, painful. That learning process, when you learn from others, that's what we call low tuition learning. But when you learn from your own mistakes, often the test comes before the lesson, and you learn better that way. But the price of that tuition is pretty harsh sometimes, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it absolutely is. I
Okay.
prefer the low tuition learning. At this point in life, give me the low tuition 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, I had that hard-headed version, and it probably through my 20s and 30s. So I learned the way I like to learn. Yeah.
We all kind of get that moment of I can do it and I can do it better and I can do it best. And like you said, until you hit your head and there's that moment of essentially clarity that comes about, it doesn't really literally hit you until then. So again, at this point, give me the low tuition. I'm okay with following the instruction and the path that's been blazed before me. I will politely cruise down that same path. Again, unless it's in something that's industry changing where I've got to, take the lead and take the arrows as they come my way for somebody else behind me. But at this point, as they say, there's nothing new under the sun. Sometimes you just have a better way of rephrasing or reframing it.
Exactly. So as I look at you, I'm going to read a little bit because it's important. You have built some companies. You have led national sales teams, and you've launched changes to companies and initiatives that are transformational organizationally, and both in the insurance industry and in the financial industry, which are a lot of crazy, complex transactions. But you also say the most important thing to me, you built people. My book is Building Men, so you hit me right where I live. What do you mean by you built people?
Well, I'll go back about 10-ish years. So I've been in the space of building people, so to speak, for about 20, but the most relevant and consistent and time, I'll call it consuming time frame was in this last 10 years or so, where in management primarily, I found that you have the ability to just point and say, do the thing. And you also have a choice, to me, of doing it a different way. And for me, it was all about
Yeah.
doing it the different way. So I could just point and say, yes, get on the phone, make these dials, hit these metrics, and then judge them by the KPIs that ultimately I'm responsible for on paper. Or
Right.
I could actually work with the person. And this is where I got a nickname. I'll tell you in a second. I can work with the person as a person and
Yeah.
not as a profit center. And I
Yeah.
found that doing it that way, Jim, was a lot more advantageous to my overall results, again, as a manager, selfishly speaking, and to the company as a whole. But most importantly, it was more advantageous to that person who was
Mm.
able to see that just because someone was in a different space than they were from a hierarchy standpoint, it didn't mean that they were any better or less than.
Hmm.
Right. And oftentimes within a position, a person may struggle with feelings of low self confidence or imposter syndrome for one reason or another. And
Yeah.
it's nice to have somebody that can actually see you, right? See that person as a person, work with them where they are, and then help them to actually grow into whatever space and place that they're needed for that particular profession. And doing that gained me the nickname, the gardener.
The
And it's
gardener.
literally, yeah, yeah.
That's
It,
awesome.
well, it's a play on my last name, of course, Flowers.
Uh-huh.
So it's different to hear it now and really embrace it versus in high school. I went to an all boy private Catholic high school, and with the
Uh-huh.
last name like Flowers and an all boy private Catholic high school, you can imagine I was literally every name under every flower you can think of:
Yeah.
roses, daisies, tulips, chrysanthemum. I still have trouble pronouncing
Yeah.
that. I was all of those things. So now, as the gardener, and then I took that, embraced it, and then called myself the gardener of growth in that environment. And I still use it sometimes today.
Yeah.
It's more meaningful now because when I welcome people into my space, into my place of work, and which I would consider a garden. I actually have a sign on my door that says "Welcome to the Garden." I take that more in a space where I can cultivate great behaviors, great attitudes. And it's not just in a business setting. I do that with my family also, as the door I was pointing at is my home office.
Yeah.
So growing people is something that is near and dear to me.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's something that when you put it inside of a professional environment, take the numbers off the table and work to grow the person, the numbers ultimately will take care of themselves.
Yeah. Do you think you came by that naturally, or is that something that was cultivated in you?
It was definitely cultivated. You know, they have that saying, people like to say, oh, well, leaders are born, not made. You know, yes, there might be some characteristics of a person that may be more advantageous to being a leader than another person.
Right.
And environment plays a role in everyone's growth. I
Uh-huh.
don't care where you are, right? Epigenetics is real. The environment that shapes who and how you become is a very real thing. So
Hmm.
I'll say that that was also cultivated in me, much like you mentioned earlier, the learning through traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
Going through corporate America, I gained some traumatic, I'll call it merit badges, if you
Okay.
will. And those
That's
merit
awesome.
badges, yeah, yeah, look, I was in Boy Scouts too. So be prepared, right? Shout out to Boy
Yeah.
Scouts of America. The Those particular merit badges were earned through being different, and you know, and I'll speak to just a brief moment as a person of color in a corporate setting where you're working and traversing through the different channels of leadership. The conversations change,
Yeah.
and you have to be able to navigate those conversations, understand what's being said, and know when and when not to interject. So
Hmm.
through that experiences, or those experiences I should say, over the years, I grew from a leader standpoint in that corporate setting. Now, you know, we're going to go back a little bit to go forward. I did come from a direct sales background 20 years ago, and in that space was where I regained my love for reading. I regained my love for learning. I saw personal growth as a thing that can be done at any age for any person of any background.
Hmm.
And I actually truly embraced personal responsibility. And that, to me, Jim, is one of the biggest things that is missing in several generations.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that really spans generations, is personal responsibility. So to your question about the whether or not it was something that was innate versus cultivated, I give homage all the time to a few things, and I'll share them now. I don't get any kudos or tickets or toasters for them. But the personal development that I had received by being inside a direct sales organization, number one, which led me to again reading on a consistent basis, and ultimately introducing me to a program called Landmark Education, where I'd taken what's called the Landmark Forum. I'm a graduate of the Forum, and that changed my life.
All
I
right.
lost weight, finished a degree, got another one, and not that school is everything, but it's one of those things that were on my bucket list.
Yeah.
I got in more mended relationships, and the whole nine came from me doing that program. And the last portion is Toastmasters.
All
So
right.
it's a worldwide organization. Sounds like you're familiar with
Gotta
Toastmasters.
love Toastmasters, man.
Absolutely. And in that space, I learned to speak and not just talk.
Uh-huh.
Whereas people like to confuse the terminology and think that one means the other. No, there is a distinct difference between just talking and actually speaking. So
Yeah.
I learned to speak and develop my ability to communicate effectively over time. So
Yeah.
again, to your question, absolutely, it was cultivated. And I like to always pay credit and homage where it's due.
Yeah. Communication is a lost art.
Hmm.
And I think many times that little screen that we carry around with us is sometimes the biggest combatant that we face in this
Hmm.
communication rich environment where we don't communicate with another anymore. And so, forgive me for all the people watching this on a 4-inch screen, but there's nothing like face to face. And technology has enabled this because you and I are talking face to face right now, and other people
Right.
get to listen in on the conversation. But communication is the lost art, and so. And speaking of that, information is everywhere. I mean, everywhere you look,
Absolutely.
there's a different way that we can draw in information. It's no more true than it is in the financial industry and in the insurance industry. So,
Hmm.
you look at those and you say, hey, those are going to be the next like major civil rights battles. And I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
why would you say that, man? I'm scratching my head going, insurance should be easy, like measure, do the math, and finance should be easy because it's mere addition, but it's not anymore, is it?
It's more like polynomial trigonometry to the 18th degree with the sine and cosine wave squared and take the coefficient of that,
Yeah.
right? Is ultimately what it boils down to. It's seemingly the equivalent between organic chemistry and Calc 2.
Yeah.
And for the folks out there that have ever taken those classes, you understand what I mean, okay?
Exactly.
Where it can be, and truly, Jim, it is as simple as addition, subtraction, maybe a little bit of multiplication in there,
Hmm.
and then maybe a little bit of division, but the basic elements are absolutely there. And as a choice, certain companies and entities overcomplicate it. They misguide and misdirect. They add in those parentheses and square root signs and raise things to the nth degree for no reason at all. And it's done under the veil of helping to make a more effective healthcare system. When in the reality of it, that confusion leads to hyperinflation, it leads to elevated medical costs, it leads to people shying away from care and intelligence and learning about finances from both the like a life insurance and a health insurance perspective,
Hmm.
because it is overly complicated for no reason.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I stand to, again, not just complain about, but actually use my life to make changes within today.
Yeah. One of the things, so our folks understand, as a small business owner, I would go back and I would do our annual renewal, the whole process of dissection,
Hmm.
where your wallet is cut from your pocket, and they would,
That's
and
it.
they would come in, and I'm like, we had a good year. We had a good year because our revenue was up, we were more profitable, we added people, and we had, and so that was about my business. But then I would talk to them and say, we have a really low average age for our insurance, which is really good
Hmm.
for you guys. And we didn't have any cancer, and we didn't have any amputations, we didn't have any transplants. Like, we had a couple of cases of the flus and a broken arm. And so my numbers ought to go down. And they would be like, well, you're so lucky. You're only going to get nailed about 13% this year. And everybody else is getting 30. And I was like, no, this can't be. And then it seemed like the brokers were
Mm-hmm.
in tune with the needs of the insurer rather than of the client. Am I fishing in the wrong pond here?
I am so glad that you brought that up. And for the listeners out there, this was not scripted. We didn't talk about this ahead of time. So this is literally your experience that's coming
Yeah.
up and understanding what I do in my line of work.
Yeah,
I
there's like
appreciate
20
you.
years of experience, private.
Exactly. Exactly.
25
So
years of increases, never a decrease.
I will be probably not the first to say this out loud. I definitely won't be the last. And I'm not sure if anyone's ever been on the show to actually talk about this in this way before. And exactly what you said is in alignment, where the broker has an alignment with the insurer as opposed to the client.
Aha.
And I'll be transparent without throwing any particular alphabet company under the bus, that I did used to work with one of those national brokerages. And what turned me off almost not immediately upon partnering with them, but several months in, is where maybe about the second month, I sat in a room with them and one of these carriers
Hmm.
that, again, I won't throw the carrier under the bus, but there is an acronym in the industry, BUCA, BUCA. It stands for Blue Cross United Cigna Aetna.
Yeah.
And it was one of it was one of the BUCAs that came in, stood in the front of the room, and they put a spreadsheet up of all of the particular broker, that the national brokers that I work with, they put all of their book of business up on screen. And what they said was the part that really got me the most, and it's directly in alignment with what you just shared. You said, hey, well, we had a great year financially, and we had very low usage of the plan from a catastrophic point of view.
Yeah.
Yet we're only getting the gift of a 13% increase that year. I'm going to share a couple of stories, and I want to do it quickly, where in that room, watching this spreadsheet up on screen, the gentleman from the Buka company literally said, well, we've got to make certain amounts of profit. So where do we need to make some adjustments on these numbers? And first, I'm just kind of sitting in the back, just wondering, what does he mean adjustments on the numbers? So what I was looking at was a spreadsheet of all of the proposed renewals for each one of the companies in this brokerage's book of business. And what they would do, and this is the part that got me most, they would point to a company, and the agent that was responsible for that particular company, he would talk about the finances of the company, whether they had a good year or not, whether they had any catastrophic claims or not. And
Wow.
oftentimes, if the company had a good year financially, the proposed increase in percentage for renewal, because it's typically an increase, would stay the same or it would go up. Right. So if they were in
Hmm.
single digits, they may take them to double digits, because the logic and rationale was, well, they could afford it. Right. We'd go down the list. They talk about another company. They say, well, this company is ticked off at the fact that X, Y, and Z happened throughout the year, maybe some bad experiences with claims. And they said, if the numbers go up any more, then they're going to have to, start shopping elsewhere.
Yeah, we're gonna
So
dump them.
exactly. Now
Yeah.
that's a game in and of itself, because it's like, you shop in the same thing.
Yeah.
It's that's another conversation that may just come up, but what would happen there is they would actually decrease by a few points. They would still have an increase overall, but they would decrease by a few points the proposed renewal, because they wanted to make sure that the business stayed on the books. Now, one has to
Hmm.
ask, why is it that instead of actually having a conversation about the health of the employees, right? That's probably got something to do with health
You
insurance.
think that's
Uh,
relevant?
yeah, why
Oh
isn't
my
that
goodness.
the topic of conversation in this
Yeah.
renewal meeting?
Oh.
And it sickened me to a point where, again, I didn't stay with that company long. I decided that I'd do this myself because I could do it with some integrity. But I'll share with you another story that was even more impressive. And we did this conversation live on a sales conference for Next Gen Mastermind Partners in January of this year. So I'm okay to repeat this stuff because it's already out there in the world of
Yeah.
the internet. So I was on the panel, and a gentleman by the name of Terry Shook was a 20-year executive with Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Uh-huh.
And the story that he gave just really cemented what I'd already seen and what you've experienced. But I'll give you even more insight into how this happened. So he says to the audience, he says, We had a renewal meeting with a company one year, and because it was in my power to do so, I gave them a 30% decrease. Decrease. Yeah, yes, yeah, your eyes popped up. I gave them a 30% decrease in their premium for renewal the next year. Now, we're used to hearing the numbers go up, but this time he gave a 30% decrease in the premiums. And Jim, I bet for no reason in the world would you guess why he gave this decrease.
They had a bad year.
He liked their beer.
Oh my gosh.
He liked their beer, Jim.
Wow.
100% of the reason why this company got a reduction in their premium for the next year is because the executive who had the power to do so liked their beer.
Wow.
Now,
There's a
tell
lesson
me,
there. You should be a good brewer.
if nothing else, right? You better be really good at what you do and share it and make sure that the executives at that company have samples, right? If you're in the
Exactly.
food and beverage industry. So just knowing that this type of thing takes place on a regular basis, it didn't sit well with me. And there's, this happened again before in my direct to consumer
Hmm.
health insurance life, but even more so on the group side because there's so many more people being impacted. Again, it was time for
Wow.
somebody, which there are others like myself out there, but it was just time for me to, I should say, join that movement
Yeah.
and standing up for change.
So as you look behind the curtain and you see that there's actuaries and statisticians and underwriters who are all supposed to be communicating on a pretty scientific level,
Mhm.
um, that may not be the first thing that is happening behind the curtain, is it?
So there are a couple curtains, and there's the one that's in the basement around the bend next to the nobody gives a crap section, which is where those guys sit, right? The
Okay.
actuaries and statisticians that come up with the actual numbers
Uh-huh.
that make sense to initially price the plans where you have to have them filed with the state. So they do the things that are essentially mandatory, legally
Okay.
speaking, to be done so that there's some sort of basis at least for an
Hmm.
initial filing.
Yeah.
Then there's the other curtain. And this curtain usually resides on like the 15th or the 19th floor. It's typically in penthouse form and fashion. And the people that are behind this particular curtain sit at a nice mahogany table with Italian leather chairs. And typically there's going to be some Perrier to one side, maybe some wine or cognac to the other side. And that conversation is a different conversation than the one that's in the basement and dungeon.
And so the
See,
one that really sets the price is the ivory tower, regardless of what happens in the math department, if you will.
precisely, right? So in the ivory tower, there's not only the ivory, there's not only the mahogany, there's not only the Italian leather, but there's also big screens on the wall. And
Hmm.
those big screens have charts and graphs. And I bet your bottom dollar you can guess what those charts and graphs represent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Profit margins.
Yeah.
Profit margins.
Well, and I'm a
So
fan of profit. I like money, and I like companies that are profitable, and I wanted my company to be
absolutely.
profitable. But I didn't. I think being above board
Mm,
is certainly more important. Or there's a sign that I love, and it encompasses a saying that has really been a hallmark of my business career, and that's
mm.
transparency fosters credibility. And what I'm hearing is that the insurance and perhaps even the finance industry doesn't have a lot of transparency there, does it?
There are fights on Capitol Hill right now, lobbyists right now that are asking for legally the hospitals to open up the doors to their charge masters and show why it is that Tylenol is $236, right? Or
Yeah.
why the CPT code for an MRI lands a $9,700 charge on their claim sheet.
Hmm.
So it is transparency there. It is. It's just not there in the traditional sense where the bukas oftentimes won't even give you access to detailed claims data. So to all those
Yeah.
employers out there or people in benefits making decisions, if you are in we'll call it a fully insured health plan, one of the BUCAs, again, Blue Cross, United, Cigna,
Hmm.
or Aetna, if you're in one of those plans and you're anywhere between 25 to 250, hell, even 500 employees, ask for your data.
Yeah.
Ask for your
So,
data.
so what is it that you do? I mean, part of me, I have this sense that like you're coming in and you're the dude with the shield and the sword, and you're going to come after that dragon and go, listen, you got to play by the rules. Is that accurate?
And I like that analogy and actually the visual. I'd probably wear a pretty nice shield and suit of armor to handle the dragon. So what I do is that, and in the truest sense, because conflict only creates more confusion,
Hmm.
I'd rather provide clarity to the potential clients
Yeah.
by taking an educator's approach. So oftentimes I won't even sit across the table from you if I don't have to.
Hmm.
I'd rather sit beside you so that we can then get the similar point of view on what's going on. And
Hmm.
what we do is educate first. So, of course, there are some things that I'll need to know, meaning I'll ask some questions in a very consultative and conversational type of way. And from there, there'll be a slight bit of education until I get permission to educate more. And what we would educate on are the strategies that are in existence today. Right? Many Fortune 500 companies use self-funding methodologies in order to actually take control of their healthcare spend. They don't just let them go willy-nilly and
Yeah.
accept whatever comes to them at renewal time when they have 3 months to potentially change it, but they typically won't because they don't have enough time to. And it's like
Yeah.
this rush job between August, September, and October
Yeah.
to get you to sign the contract, right? And that's what the brokers are really good at helping you to do. So again, what we do is take the time to educate again midway through a renewal cycle
Uh-huh.
on what the options are. Again, truly educating from an objective and non-biased perspective. Hell, I'll bring in the Buka quotes as well if that's what you need to see.
Yeah.
Typically, though, because there's that lack of transparency, we simply point it out.
Yeah.
We uncover for employers whether or not it makes a difference for them to have the consistent and reliable increase year over year with
Uh-huh.
no control over how you can actually help to impact the lives of your employees by taking actionable steps on the data, right? If that's where you'd like to live, or if you like full control over your data, if you like
Hmm.
transparency into where every single dollar is going,
Yeah.
right? Because on one side, there's rebates and there's money being spent and there's backdoor deals and there's some really comfy relationships between pharmacies and hospitals and physicians. On the other side, right, when you take profit off the table and you focus solely on the client,
Hmm.
the end result is typically being able to drive down the cost of healthcare. So
Yeah.
instead of a $5,000 MRI, care management says that same MRI can be done for $499.
Yeah.
Why would we send you to the hospital? Yes, you might have to go a mile down the road, and
Uh-huh.
that's okay. Even if it's 10 miles down, that's okay. Because you think about that in aggregate, when instead of spending 5,000, you're spending 500.
That's a
Do that 10
$4,500
times.
taxi ride, man.
That's a huge taxi ride, right? And oftentimes, because as the advisor on cases like this, we understand that depending on the area, you might have to go further to save those dollars. Well, what would happen is they put in benefits to make sure that it's a lower burden on the employee, even rewards and incentives, so that the employee
Exactly.
can, once educated, take ownership of their health care and actually work
Exactly.
together to make a
Exactly.
difference and keep those dollars down.
All right. So, you are, by any measure, an entrepreneur because you were in the corporate space and now you're an entrepreneur by any measure. But you really believe in the mentorship model.
Absolutely.
Um, Tell me why.
Well, we talked about it earlier
Uh
just a
huh.
bit. I can run out there and take all the arrows, but in this line of work, me taking arrows can be equivalent to a company spending $1 million a month more than they should.
Hmm.
It can be the difference between a family actually receiving the right type of care versus not because they were guided again in the right direction by a care management company that actually wanted to see a positive outcome, that could tell that the right doctor that'll reduce the instance of them having to go back into the hospital was the one selected, versus a doctor that, even though they have a great score on Google, behind the scenes, meaning the reviews that the customers don't see, show that they have a 26% success rate, right?
Yeah.
26%, that's not that good.
Yeah.
So when you
Even
apply to
baseball's better than
mentorship,
that.
I
The worst team in baseball is better than that.
thank you, right? Thank you. So when you apply the mentorship model to this, Jim, it it makes it better for all parties involved. And why I believe in this so much is because I have one,
Hmm.
right? Prior to, I thought that, hey, I can do it all. It can just be me, right? I don't have to see anybody. But I've since learned that it's much easier to work with someone who has gone out for 5, 10, 15, 20 years prior,
Yeah.
taken those arrows, and essentially can help you guide and navigate this in a way that will not only keep you refreshed throughout the process, but it'll extend your life and longevity along the way. So if nothing else, mentors help you live longer.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's something I think we can all get behind, living a little longer.
Just a little bit, a few decades further. I'll take a few more years.
Hey, at the Grampian, we only take sponsorships where we actually use and love the products, and y'all know I love my dogs. At Canine Meats, they believe every pup deserves healthy, satisfying treats that are going to help them perform at a higher level. Get Canine Meats. All right. So as I look at this, man, you've been through the corporate enterprise, you've been through starting your own gig, you've mentored people in a corporate atmosphere, now in an entrepreneurial. You've really come alongside lots of customers, but you've lived a big life by any measure. And who is that person who you would point to and that they affected you in such a deep way where you just got to give them props right now and say, that was one of my champions?
It's funny, as you were mentioning, framing the question, I had a name pop into mind, and I don't want to say any other name but this one. There was a gentleman, excuse me, by the name of Darnell Self.
Uh-huh.
And Darnell Self is, by all means, multi-million dollar professional entrepreneur. He actually was in the direct sales industries, working with the same company, Legal Shield. Again, I'll mention it here, where when I first learned of him 20 plus years ago, it was to me refreshing to see that, hey, there's somebody like me that, at the time I was in college, and I think he had, this story about how it took him forever to finish college, which it ultimately did for me too, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Um, to realize that, you can get out here and make a difference in people's lives and empower others and earn 6 and 7 figures a month, right? Well, a year is great, a month is even better,
Yeah.
right? But by having that type of role model and example to pour into me through the books they would be recommended, through the different trainings and things that nature, to me it was really impactful. So Darnell Self, if you ever get a chance to listen to this, thank you for helping me become the man that I am today through your guidance, leadership, mentorship, etc. With Prepaid Legal at the time, now Legal Shield, and God bless you for all that you continue to do.
All right. Good on you, Darnell. Now, how are people going to find you, get a hold of you, stay in touch with you, let you know that they're interested in what you do?
Absolutely. So right now, I prefer to have people to actually engage with me through LinkedIn for a number of reasons. Number
Hmm.
one, I'm actually just launching the speaking portion of my business. So I had the gentleman take down my website to put all the speaker stuff in there.
Yeah.
Recently just launched a book on Amazon that hit #1 bestseller in about 2 weeks. It is specifically, it's industry related. So it's the Hidden Healthcare Gold Mine. We launched another book just Monday, and all of these things have to be updated
Yeah.
on the site. So it's happening faster than he has time to update. So I say, you know what? Let's just do this. We point everything to my LinkedIn page. So my name, paulhflowersjr.com, will actually take you to my LinkedIn page. And that's where I'm going to continue to produce and promote a lot of content. Now, people that are on LinkedIn are typically engaging with posts and liking things
Oh,
on a
yeah.
semi-regular basis. Because look, I keep it real. You'll be on LinkedIn, more times than you'll be on anybody's site. Again,
Oh,
for those
yeah.
that use it.
For
So
sure.
with that being the case, LinkedIn is the best way to find me. Again, Paul H. Flowers Jr. You just search it just like that. And I'm the only person that's going to pop. Excuse me. I'm the only person that should pop up in that regard. Or if you are daring enough, and I do mean daring, call me. Right?
All right.
Call me 844-513-5433. That number will typically ring through the office and come to my cell phone when I'm not sitting at a desk, which isn't always the case.
All right. So, folks, go on LinkedIn, Paul H. Flowers, like more than one flower, two flowers, Jr. on LinkedIn. And thanks for joining us, Paul. We greatly appreciate you. Until next time, Grampian Nation, you keep dreaming those Grampian-sized dreams. This is Jim, and I am out. When you get an opportunity, subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcast.